The notification sound from my phone cut through the morning silence like a knife. It was 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in March, and I was standing in my cramped kitchen, waiting for the coffee to brew. Sarah was still asleep upstairs, and our daughter Emma wouldn't be up for another hour. These quiet moments before the chaos of the day began were sacred to me, a brief respite from the relentless pressure that had become my life. I almost ignored the phone. Almost. But something about the persistence of the notification made me glance at the screen. It was my banking app alerting me to account activity. Probably another overdraft fee, I thought bitterly. We've been living paycheck to paycheck for months, ever since the construction company I worked for had cut our hours. Sarah's job at the local elementary school barely covered groceries, and Emma's asthma medications were getting more expensive every month. I swiped open the app, expecting to see the familiar red numbers that had haunted my dreams. Instead, my legs nearly gave out beneath me. Account balance, $4,127,843.67. I stared at the screen until my eyes watered. The numbers didn't change. I closed the app and opened it again. Still there. I rubbed my eyes, certain I was hallucinating from exhaustion and stress. The balance remained. $4,127,843.67. My hands began to shake. The coffee maker finished brewing with a cheerful beep that sounded impossibly loud in the sudden ringing in my ears. I set the phone down on the counter with trembling fingers and gripped the edge of the granite, the one luxury we'd splurged on when we bought the house 5 years ago, back when I thought financial security was inevitable. This had to be a mistake, a glitch in the system. But as I stared at those numbers, a part of my mind, the part that had been desperate for so long, began to calculate. Emma's medical bills, the mortgage we were 3 months behind on, Sarah's student loans, the credit card debt that kept growing no matter how carefully we budgeted. I grabbed the phone again and checked the transaction history. There it was, posted at 12:03 a.m. Electronic deposit, wire transfer, First National Commercial Banking, $4,127,500. The additional $343.67 had been my actual account balance before the transfer. My breathing became shallow. This wasn't my money. It couldn't be. But whose was it? And more importantly, what was I going to do about it? The rational part of my mind knew exactly what I should do. Call the bank immediately. Report the error. Return the money to its rightful owner. That's what good people did. Honest people. The kind of person I'd always believed myself to be. But as I stood there in my kitchen, surrounded by the evidence of our struggling life, the stack of unpaid bills on the counter, the generic cereal boxes we bought because we couldn't afford the brand names Emma preferred, the notice from the mortgage company threatening foreclosure, that rational voice grew quieter. I thought about the call I'd had with Emma's doctor the week before. Her new inhaler would cost $400 a month, even with insurance. "We'll make it work," Sarah had said after I'd hung up, but I'd seen the fear in her eyes. The same fear I saw in the mirror every morning. What if I didn't call the bank right away? What if I waited a few hours, maybe a day, just to see what happened? Maybe this was some kind of test, or maybe the money was legitimately mine, an inheritance from some distant relative I'd never known about. Stranger things had happened, right? Even as I formed these rationalizations, I knew they were lies, but lies had a way of becoming comfortable when desperation was the alternative. I poured my coffee with unsteady hands and walked to the living room window. Outside, my neighbor Jerry was already working in his garden, probably having been up since dawn. Jerry was retired, comfortable, never had to choose between his daughter's medication and the electric bill. He caught sight of me through the window and waved cheerfully. I waved back, wondering what he would do in my situation. The house began to stir above me. Sarah's alarm would go off in 15 minutes, and our morning routine would begin. Coffee for her, breakfast for Emma, the careful dance of getting everyone ready while avoiding the topics that caused arguments: money, the future, the growing distance between Sarah and me that we both pretended not to notice. But this morning could be different. This morning we could wake up from the nightmare we've been living for the past year. I opened my laptop and logged into the bank's website, half expecting the mobile app to have been wrong. But there it was again, that impossible number. I clicked through to the account details, looking for any additional information about the transfer. The only details were what I'd already seen. First National Commercial Banking processed at 12:03 a.m. I'd never heard of First National Commercial Banking, but a quick Google search revealed it was a large regional bank that specialized in business and commercial accounts. That made sense. This kind of money wasn't the result of someone's personal banking error. This was serious business money, company money, maybe even dirty money. The thought sent a chill through me. What if this wasn't just a banking error? What if someone had used my account for money laundering? What if I was now unknowingly complicit in some criminal enterprise? But as quickly as the fear came, another thought followed. If the money was from illegal activities, calling the bank would only draw attention to me. I could become a target, or worse, a suspect. I was spiraling, I knew it, but I couldn't stop. Every scenario I imagined led to complications, consequences, potential dangers. But every scenario also included the possibility, however slim, that this money could save my family. David? Sarah's voice drifted down from upstairs. Coffee ready? Yeah, I called back, my voice cracking slightly. Just finishing up. I closed the laptop and tried to compose myself. Sarah had enough to worry about without adding my discovery to the mix, at least not until I figured out what I was going to do. But as I climbed the stairs to start our morning routine, I realized I'd already made a decision. I wasn't calling the bank. Not yet. Sarah was sitting on the edge of our bed, stretching and yawning. Even exhausted and stressed, she was beautiful. Her dark hair was messy from sleep, and she wore an old t-shirt from the 5K run we'd done together 3 years ago, back when we had time and energy for such things. You're up early, she said, accepting the coffee I handed her. Couldn't sleep, I replied, which was true enough. The Morrison account again? She knew I'd been worrying about a particular client who was threatening to take their business elsewhere if we couldn't lower our rates. Among other things. I sat down next to her, fighting the urge to blurt out everything. How'd you sleep? Like the dead. Emma only woke up once, and her breathing seemed better. Sarah sipped her coffee and looked at me with concern. You look pale. Are you feeling okay? I was anything but okay. But how could I explain that? Just tired. It'll pass. Emma's voice carried from her room down the hall. Mommy? Daddy? I'm hungry. Sarah smiled, and for a moment the worry lines around her eyes disappeared. Our alarm clock, she said, standing up. I'll get her breakfast started if you want to shower first. Thanks. I kissed her forehead, inhaling the familiar scent of her shampoo. I love you. She paused in the doorway, looking back at me with surprise. We'd been going through the motions lately, focused on survival rather than romance. I love you too. What brought that on? Can't a man tell his wife he loves her? Of course he can. She smiled, but I could see the question in her eyes. Never mind. Go shower. We've got to get Emma to school early today for her field trip. As the hot water ran over me, I tried to think clearly. I had stumbled into a situation that could change everything for my family. The money sitting in my account right now could pay off our mortgage, Emma's medical bills, Sarah's student loans, and still leave us comfortable for years. But it wasn't mine. Or was it? The more I thought about it, the more I realized how little I actually knew about banking systems and regulations. What if this was some kind of lottery or Sweepstakes I'd forgotten entering. What if it was an inheritance from someone I didn't remember? What if it was actually mine, and calling the bank would only create unnecessary complications? These thoughts felt like grasping at straws, but desperation has a way of making straws seem substantial. By the time I got out of the shower, Sarah had Emma dressed and eating breakfast. Emma was chattering excitedly about her class trip to the Science Museum, her inhaler sitting next to her juice box as a constant reminder of our financial strain. "Daddy," she exclaimed as I entered the kitchen, "we're going to see real dinosaurs today." "Not real dinosaurs, sweetheart," I said, kissing the top of her head. "Fossils of dinosaurs." "What's a fossil?" As I explained fossils to my 7-year-old daughter, I couldn't help but think about my own life. How long before our family became a fossil of what it used to be? How long before the financial pressure cracked us beyond repair? Sarah handed me a piece of toast and my travel mug. "Don't forget you have the Peterson consultation at 10. The Peterson consultation, a potential new client that could bring in enough work to get us caught up on bills. Before this morning, that meeting had felt like our lifeline. Now it seemed insignificant next to the numbers in my bank account. "Right," I said, though my mind was elsewhere. "Are you sure you're okay?" Sarah asked quietly while Emma was distracted with her breakfast. "You seem different this morning." "Please, just thinking about work stuff." Another lie. They were coming easier now. We went through the motions of our morning routine. Emma brushed her teeth while I gathered her field trip permission slip and emergency inhaler. Sarah packed lunches while I loaded the dishwasher. Normal domestic tasks that felt surreal given the secret I was carrying. As we walked Emma to the bus stop, she slipped her small hand into mine. "Daddy, are you sad?" The question caught me off guard. "What makes you ask that, Pumpkin?" "You have your worry face on." Kids see everything. "I'm not sad when I'm with you and Mommy," I said, squeezing her hand. "Good," she said matter-of-factly. "Mrs. Johnson says, worrying too much makes your hair fall out, and you don't have much hair left." Sarah laughed, and for a moment we were just a normal family having a normal morning. But as Emma's bus pulled away and Sarah headed to her car for work, the weight of my secret crashed back down on me. "Have a good day," Sarah called out. "And David? Try not to worry so much. Things will work out." If only she knew how much things might be about to work out. I drove to the office in a daze, checking my phone at every red light to make sure the money was still there. It was. $4,127,843.67, taunting me with its persistence. My phone rang as I pulled into the parking lot of the small office building where our construction firm rented space. It was my business partner, Mike. "Hey, Dave. Bad news about the Morrison account." My stomach dropped. "They're leaving?" "Walked yesterday afternoon. Said our bid was 30% higher than the competition." I closed my eyes. The Morrison account represented nearly a quarter of our annual revenue. How are we supposed to compete with companies that can afford to underbid? "I don't know, man. But we need to figure something out fast. I ran the numbers last night, and without Morrison..." He trailed off, but I knew what he wasn't saying. Without Morrison, we were looking at layoffs, maybe even closing down. "We'll figure something out," I said, though I had no idea what. The Peterson meeting is our Hail Mary. If we can land them and maybe 2 or 3 more clients like them, we might survive this. After Mike hung up, I sat in my car staring at the office building. Through the windows, I could see our small team already at work. Good people with families of their own, all depending on Mike and me to keep the company afloat. How many of them would I have to let go if we couldn't turn things around? But what if I didn't have to let anyone go? What if the money in my account could save not just my family, but all the families that depended on our little company? I shook my head. That kind of thinking was dangerous. The money wasn't mine, and using it would be theft, no matter how I justified it. But was it really theft if no one came looking for it? I pulled out my phone and called my bank's customer service line. A cheerful recorded voice offered me a menu of options. I selected account inquiries and waited on hold for 12 minutes before a human voice answered. First Community Bank, this is Janet speaking. How can I help you today? Hi, Janet. I'm calling about a deposit that was made to my account. I think there might be an error. I'd be happy to help you with that. Can I have your account number, please? I provided the number and went through the security questions. Okay, Mr. Carver, I see your account here. What can I help you with regarding a deposit? There was a wire transfer posted to my account early this morning, a large amount. I don't think it belongs to me. I heard typing on the other end. I see the transaction you're referring to. Let me check the details. This shows as a legitimate wire transfer from First National Commercial Banking. Do you have any business dealings with them? No, I've never heard of them before today. Well, Mr. Carver, sometimes these transfers can be delayed by several days or even weeks due to processing times. Is it possible this is related to a business transaction, insurance settlement, or inheritance that you might have forgotten about? The suggestion felt like permission. Maybe. Is there any way to get more information about where the transfer came from? I can see that it originated from First National Commercial Banking's wire department, but I don't have access to their internal records. You would need to contact them directly if you want more details about the sending party. And what if I can't reach them? Or what if this really is a mistake? Mr. Finn, Carver, if someone sent you money by mistake, they would contact their bank to reverse the transaction. The sending bank would then contact us to initiate a reversal. Until that happens, the money is legally in your account. Legally in my account. Those words echoed in my mind long after I hung up. I researched First National Commercial Banking online and found a customer service number. But when I called, I was told that information about wire transfers could only be discussed with the account holder who initiated the transfer. They wouldn't even confirm whether such a transfer had taken place. It was as if the money had materialized from thin air. I spent the morning trying to focus on work, but every few minutes I found myself checking my account balance. The money was still there, earning interest by the minute. With each hour that passed, the transfer seemed less like an error and more like destiny. The Peterson consultation went better than expected. They were a mid-sized real estate development company looking for a general contractor for a series of residential projects. The kind of work that could keep us busy for 2 years and provide steady income for everyone on our team. We've been burned by contractors who overpromise and underdeliver, Mrs. Peterson explained as we toured one of their existing properties. We need someone reliable, someone who can deliver quality work on time and on budget. That's exactly what we specialize in, I assured her, though privately I wondered how we could deliver anything on budget when we were barely staying afloat. Your references check out well, Mr. Peterson added, but we're concerned about your company's capacity. Some of the contractors we've talked to are stretched pretty thin right now. This was my opening. Actually, we're in a unique position to take on a project of this scope. We've recently secured additional financing that would allow us to expand our team and invest in better equipment. Where had that come from? I hadn't planned to say it, but the words flowed naturally. And technically, it wasn't a lie. The money in my account could do exactly that. The Petersons exchanged glances. That's good to hear. Mrs. Peterson said, a lot of smaller firms are struggling right now. We're not just surviving, I heard myself saying. We're growing. By the end of the meeting, they were practically ready to sign a contract. They wanted to see a detailed proposal by Friday, including our timeline and a breakdown of our team structure. As I drove back to the office, I felt a mixture of excitement and nausea. I'd essentially committed us to a project that we couldn't currently handle without the money that wasn't mine. But if I used just a portion of those funds to hire additional workers and rent better equipment, we could not only fulfill the Peterson contract, but position ourselves for even bigger opportunities. It would be an investment, not theft. I would pay back every penny once the business was profitable again. But even as I constructed this rationalization, I knew it was built on quicksand. Back at the office, Mike was waiting with more bad news. "The Hendricks project is 3 weeks behind schedule," he said without preamble. "The delays are costing us penalties, and now they're threatening to sue if we don't finish by the end of the month." The Hendricks project had been cursed from the beginning. Weather delays, permit issues, and now a crew member had been injured on site, which meant workers' compensation claims and safety inspections. "How bad is it financially?" I asked, though I dreaded the answer. Mike pulled out his laptop and showed me a spreadsheet that made my chest tight. "If we have to pay penalties and legal fees, plus the workers' comp, Dave, we're looking at bankruptcy. Even if we get Peterson, it might be too late." I stared at the numbers, feeling the walls closing in. Our little company, built over 8 years of hard work and sacrifice, was dying. All those employees, their families, their mortgages and car payments and dreams, all of it disappearing because we couldn't compete with bigger firms who could absorb losses that would destroy us. "There might be another option," I said slowly. Mike looked up hopefully. "What kind of option?" I almost told him, almost explained about the money sitting in my account, waiting to solve all our problems. But something held me back. Maybe it was the knowledge that Mike, decent and honest to his core, would insist I return it immediately. Or maybe it was the understanding that once I brought someone else into this secret, there would be no going back. "Let me work on it," I said instead. "Give me 24 hours before we make any decisions about bankruptcy." Mike studied my face. "Dave, what aren't you telling me? Just trust me. 24 hours. He nodded reluctantly. "Okay, but after that, we have to face reality." That afternoon, I drove home with my mind churning. 24 hours. In 24 hours, I would either have to come clean about the money and return it, watching my company and my family's future crumble, or I would have to make a choice that would change everything. Sarah's car was already in the driveway when I arrived. She was usually at work until 5, so seeing her home early sent a spike of alarm through me. I found her at the kitchen table, Emma's medical bills spread out in front of her like tarot cards predicting disaster. "Bad news from the insurance company," she said without looking up. "They're not covering Emma's new medication. It's considered experimental." "How much?" $400 a month, like Dr. Martinez said. But that's not the worst part. She held up a letter. "They're also denying coverage for her specialist visits. They want her to see a general practitioner first for evaluation. Emma had been seeing Dr. Martinez for 3 years. He understood her specific condition, her triggers, her medical history. Starting over with a general practitioner could set back her treatment by months." "We'll figure it out," I said, the same empty promise I'd been making for months. "How?" Sarah's voice cracked. "David, I've run the numbers a dozen times. Even if we cut every expense we can think of, we don't have $400 extra a month. And that's just the medication, never mind the specialist visits." She was crying now, tears falling onto the medical bills. I sat down next to her and pulled her into my arms. "I'm so tired," she whispered against my chest. "I'm tired of choosing between Emma's health and keeping the lights on. I'm tired of lying awake at night doing math in my head. I'm tired of pretending everything's going to be okay when I don't see how it can be." I held her tighter, feeling the weight of my secret like a stone in my chest. I could end her tears right now. I could tell her about the money, watch relief flood her face, promise her that Emma would have the best medical care available and that we'd never have to choose between medications and mortgages again. But I could also destroy everything if the money turned out to be traced back to criminal activity, or if the bank discovered the error and demanded not just the return of the funds, but penalties and legal action. What if, I began carefully, what if I told you I might have found a solution? Sarah pulled back to look at me. What kind of solution? A business opportunity, something that could change everything for us. Her eyes narrowed slightly. David, please tell me you're not talking about one of those get-rich-quick schemes. We can't afford to lose money we don't have. It's not a scheme. I paused, realizing I was about to step over a line. It's complicated. But I need you to trust me. Trust you to do what? Before I could answer, Emma burst through the front door, her backpack bouncing as she ran toward us. Mommy! Daddy! The dinosaurs were so cool, and there was this giant one with really big teeth, and Mrs. Johnson said it could eat a whole car. Sarah wiped her eyes quickly and smiled. That sounds amazing, sweetheart. Did you learn about fossils? As Emma launched into an elaborate description of her day, complete with dramatic reenactments of dinosaur encounters, I watched Sarah transform from a worried mother into an engaged, delighted parent. This was what I was fighting for. Not just financial stability, but the ability for my wife to smile at our daughter without the shadow of worry darkening her eyes. That evening, after Emma was asleep, Sarah and I sat on our back porch with the glasses of wine we probably couldn't afford. The spring air was warm, and fireflies were beginning to flicker in our small yard. Tell me about this business opportunity, Sarah said without preamble. I've been preparing for this conversation all afternoon, crafting half-truths that would satisfy her without revealing the full scope of what I was considering. There's a possibility of some additional funding for the company, I said, enough to take on bigger projects, expand our team, really establish ourselves in the market. What kind of funding? A loan? More like an investment opportunity. But it's complicated, and I can't give you all the details yet. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. David, we've been married for 10 years. I know when you're not telling me everything. My heart hammered in my chest. I'm trying to protect you. From what? From getting your hopes up if it doesn't work out. She turned to face me fully. Or you're trying to protect me from something else entirely. What's really going on? I could have told her then. Should have told her, but the words stuck in my throat, held back by fear and uncertainty, and the knowledge that once she knew, she would become complicit in whatever decision I made. I just need a little more time to work out the details, I said finally. Sarah stared at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, but David, whatever this is, whatever you're thinking about doing, please be careful. We'll survive the money problems. We always have. But if something happened to you... She didn't finish the thought, but she didn't need to. I leaned over and kissed her, tasting wine and worry and love. That night I lay awake listening to Sarah's steady breathing and Emma's occasional cough from down the hall. Every few hours I checked my phone. The money was still there, still waiting. I thought about all the things that money could buy. Emma's medications without worrying about the cost. A college fund so she wouldn't have to take out loans like Sarah had. A new roof for the house before the next winter. A vacation. When was the last time we'd taken a real vacation? But I also thought about prison orange jumpsuits and fraud charges and Emma visiting me through bulletproof glass. By morning, I still hadn't decided what I was going to do. I was up before dawn making coffee and checking the news on my phone when an article caught my attention. Regional Bank investigates missing wire transfer. My blood turned to ice as I read the headline, but when I clicked through, it was about a different bank entirely. and Midwest Trust, not First National Commercial Banking. Still, the article made my hands shake. According to the report, Midwest Trust was investigating the disappearance of $2.3 million that had been intended for a commercial real estate purchase. The money had vanished somewhere in the electronic transfer system, and both the FBI and bank regulators were involved in the investigation. The article quoted a banking expert explaining how wire transfer errors could occur. While electronic banking systems are generally secure and reliable, mistakes can happen. Usually these errors are caught and corrected within hours. However, in cases involving large amounts or complex routing through multiple institutions, money can sometimes end up in the wrong account. When this happens, the receiving account holder is legally obligated to return the funds immediately upon discovery. Legally obligated to return the funds immediately upon discovery. I discovered the money yesterday morning. Every hour I delayed reporting it put me further into legal jeopardy. But the article also mentioned something else. In cases where the money originates from illegal activities, recipients who return the funds quickly and cooperate with authorities are rarely prosecuted, while those who attempt to keep or use the money can face serious federal charges. What if the money in my account was connected to something criminal? What if returning it would make me a target of whoever had sent it in the first place? I was spiraling again, creating increasingly elaborate scenarios to justify my inaction. But underneath all the rationalizations, I knew the truth. I didn't want to give the money back. I wanted to keep it, use it, let it save my family and my business and my life. The question was whether I could live with myself if I did. My phone buzzed with a text from Mike. Emergency meeting at 8 a.m. Hendricks is suing us. I arrived at the office to find Mike pacing frantically, while our bookkeeper, Linda, sat at the conference table with a stack of legal documents. They filed yesterday afternoon, Linda explained. Breach of contract, failure to meet deadlines, plus they're claiming our delays cost them additional rental expenses for temporary housing for the buyers. How much are they asking for? I asked, though I dreaded the answer. $200,000 in damages, plus legal fees. The number hit me like a physical blow. We didn't have $200,000. We didn't have $20,000. There's more, Mike said grimly. Our insurance company is reviewing the claim, but they're saying our coverage might not apply because of the safety violation that caused Rodriguez's injury. Rodriguez was the crew member who'd been hurt on the Hendricks job. A good worker, a father of 3, who'd been trying to make up time by skipping a safety protocol. His injury wasn't life-threatening, but it would keep him out of work for months. So we're looking at the lawsuit, potential insurance issues, and workers' comp claims, I said, mentally calculating numbers that didn't add up to anything but disaster. Dave, Linda said quietly, even if we win the lawsuit, the legal fees alone will bankrupt us. And if we lose. She didn't need to finish. We all knew what bankruptcy would mean. Mike would lose his house. He'd leveraged everything to help start the company. Linda would lose her job just 2 years before retirement. Our crew would be unemployed in a market where construction jobs were already scarce. What about Peterson? Mike asked desperately. They want a proposal by Friday, but even if they sign, it's a long-term project. The initial payment wouldn't come for weeks, maybe months. We sat in silence, staring at the legal documents that spelled out the end of everything we'd built. There's got to be something, Mike said. Some way to buy time, negotiate a settlement, anything. I thought about the money sitting in my account. $200,000 was less than 5% of what was there. I could pay off the lawsuit, cover Rodriguez's medical expenses, and still have enough left to fund the Peterson project and expand the business. Let me make some calls, I said. There might be options I haven't explored yet. After Mike and Linda left, I sat alone in the office, staring at my computer screen. I pulled up my bank account again. The money was still there, patient and persistent. I opened a new browser tab and searched for Criminal penalties wire fraud. The results made my stomach clench. Federal charges, years in prison. But then I searched for accidental wire transfer legal obligations and found more nuanced information. Several legal experts suggested that intent was a crucial factor in prosecuting banking errors. Someone who immediately reported a mistaken transfer and cooperated with authorities was in a very different legal position than someone who tried to hide or spend money they knew wasn't theirs. But what if I didn't know it wasn't mine? What if I had reasonable cause to believe the transfer was legitimate? I called First National Commercial Banking again, this time claiming to be expecting a wire transfer that hadn't arrived. The customer service representative was polite but unhelpful, explaining that they couldn't provide information about transfers without proper authorization from the sending party. Is it possible a transfer intended for your bank was misdirected? I asked. Sir, if you're missing a wire transfer, you'll need to work with the sending bank and provide them with your account information and routing numbers so they can trace the transaction. I hung up feeling more confused than ever. If First National didn't know about a missing transfer, where had the money come from? I spent the afternoon researching First National Commercial Banking more thoroughly. It was a legitimate institution with branches across 3 states, primarily serving business customers. Their website showed typical commercial banking services: business loans, merchant accounts, wire transfers for corporate clients. But something nagged at me. I called their main number and asked to speak with someone in their wire transfer department. I'm calling about a wire transfer that was sent from your bank to my account. I explained to the representative who answered. I can help you with that. Do you have the reference number for the transfer? I provided the information from my bank statement. Let me look that up. I'm sorry, sir, but I don't show any transfer matching that reference number in our system. My heart stopped. What do you mean? According to our records, no wire transfer was sent from First National Commercial Banking with that reference number. Are you sure you have the correct information? I double-checked the numbers on my bank statement. This is what my bank shows as the source. Sir, I'd recommend contacting your bank directly about this discrepancy. Sometimes routing information can be displayed incorrectly, especially if the transfer was processed through multiple institutions. After I hung up, I sat staring at my phone. First National Commercial Banking had no record of sending the money. My bank said the money came from First National Commercial Banking. $4 million had materialized in my account from nowhere. This was either the most elaborate banking error in history or something much more serious was happening. I called my bank again and asked to speak with a supervisor about the wire transfer. Mr. Carver, the supervisor said after reviewing my account, I understand your concern, but our records clearly show this as a legitimate wire transfer from First National Commercial Banking. Wire transfers go through multiple processing systems, and sometimes there can be delays or confusion in the records. The important thing is that the money was properly received and posted to your account. But what if it's not supposed to be there? Sir, if there was an error, the sending bank would contact us to reverse the transaction. Until that happens, the funds are legitimately yours. Legitimately mine. There was that phrase again. I drove home that evening in a daze, my mind churning with possibilities and fears. The money was from nowhere, belonging to no one, sitting in my account like a gift from the universe. Or it was the result of some complex criminal enterprise, and every moment I delayed reporting it put me deeper into legal jeopardy. Sarah was in the kitchen preparing dinner when I arrived, Emma at the table working on homework with her inhaler nearby, a constant reminder of our financial struggles. How did the meeting with Mike go? Sarah asked without looking up from the stove. We're working through some challenges, I said, which was the understatement of the century. Emma looked up from her math worksheet. Daddy, what's bankruptcy? Both Sarah and I froze. Where did you hear that word, sweetheart? Sarah asked carefully. Tommy Hendricks at school said his dad is going to make you go bankruptcy because you messed up his house. I felt anger flash through me. The Hendricks project had faced every possible obstacle. most of them beyond our control. But Frank Hendricks was the type of client who blamed contractors for everything, including weather delays and permit office bureaucracy. Tommy doesn't understand grown-up business, I said, sitting down next to Emma. Sometimes people get upset when things don't go perfectly, but that doesn't mean anyone did anything wrong. Are we going to lose our house? Emma asked with the directness that only children possess. Sarah and I exchanged glances. How do you explain financial insecurity to a 7-year-old without terrifying her? No, sweetheart, Sarah said firmly. We're not going to lose our house. Mommy and Daddy are working hard to make sure everything stays the same. But I could see the doubt in Sarah's eyes, the way her smile didn't quite reach them. Emma seemed satisfied with the answer and returned to her homework, but the question hung in the air between Sarah and me. After dinner, while Emma watched cartoons in the living room, Sarah cornered me in the kitchen. We need to talk about what Emma heard at school, she said in a low voice. Is the Hendricks situation really that bad? I couldn't lie to her anymore. Not completely. They're suing us. It could be significant. Sarah's face went pale. How significant? 200,000 plus legal fees. She gripped the counter for support. David, we don't have that kind of money. We don't have any money. I know. So what happens? Do we lose the business? The house? What about Emma's medical bills? I wanted to tell her about the money. The words were right there, ready to tumble out and end her panic. But something held me back. Maybe the knowledge that once she knew, there would be no going back for either of us. I'm working on something, I said instead. I might have found a way to handle this. What way? David, you're scaring me. Just tell me what's going on. Before I could answer, my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize with a local area code. Hello? Miss Carver? This is Detective Martinez with the County Sheriff's Office. I need to speak with you about a financial matter. Can you come down to the station tomorrow morning? My blood turned to ice. What kind of financial matter? I prefer to discuss it in person. Can you be here at 9 a.m.? Do I need a lawyer? That's your choice, Mr. Carver. But I'd appreciate it if you could come in to answer some questions. After I hung up, Sarah was staring at me with wide eyes. Police? David? What's going on? I sat down heavily at the kitchen table, my mind racing. How had they connected me to the money so quickly? What did they know? What was I walking into? I don't know, I said, which was partially true. Don't lie to me. Sarah's voice was sharp now, cutting through my panic. The police don't call people about financial matters unless something serious is happening. Are we being investigated? Are you being investigated? Emma appeared in the doorway, drawn by our raised voices. Why are you fighting? We're not fighting, baby, Sarah said quickly, forcing a smile. Mommy and Daddy are just talking about grown-up things. Why don't you go brush your teeth for bed? After Emma left, Sarah turned back to me. Start talking. Right now. I looked at my wife, really looked at her. 10 years of marriage, of building a life together, of facing challenges as a team. She deserved the truth, but the truth could destroy everything. There was a deposit made to our bank account. I began slowly. A large deposit that I don't think is supposed to be there. How large? I took a deep breath. $4 million. Sarah stared at me in complete silence for nearly a minute. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. $4 million. Yesterday morning, I found it when I checked our account. And you didn't tell me. You let me spend all day crying over Emma's medical bills when there's $4 million in our account. Because it's not our money, Sarah. It's a mistake. Then why didn't you call the bank immediately? It was the question I'd been dreading. I did call them. They said it was a legitimate transfer from another bank. But when I called that bank, they had no record of sending it. Sarah began pacing the kitchen. So the money is just sitting there. And now the police want to talk to you? I don't know if the police call is related to the money. It might be about the Hendricks lawsuit or the workers' comp claim or David. Sarah stopped pacing and looked at me directly. In what universe would county sheriff's detectives call about a civil lawsuit? This is about the money. She was right, of course. My mind had been grasping for any alternative explanation, but the timing was too coincidental. What are you going to tell them? She asked. The truth. That I found the money in my account, tried to figure out where it came from, and planned to report it. Plan to report it? David, it's been over 24 hours. Why didn't you report it immediately? Because I wanted to keep it. Because I thought it could save us. Because for one brief, shining moment, I imagined what life could be like without the constant weight of financial stress crushing our family. I was scared, I said finally. Scared of what it meant, where it came from, what would happen if I got involved in something bigger than I understood. Sarah sat down across from me, her anger shifting to concern. What do you think it means? Where do you think it came from? I don't know. Maybe it's money laundering or some kind of fraud scheme or just the world's most expensive banking error. We sat in silence, the weight of the situation settling around us like fog. Upstairs, we could hear Emma getting ready for bed, humming to herself as she brushed her teeth. Normal childhood sounds in a house where nothing was normal anymore. We need a lawyer, Sarah said finally. With what money? Even if I could use the money in the account, hiring a lawyer would be admitting that I knew it wasn't mine. David, you did know it wasn't yours. You knew it the moment you saw it. She was right again. I had known. But knowing and accepting are different things, and I hadn't been ready to accept the loss of what that money could have meant for our family. So what do? Walk into the police station tomorrow and confess to a crime I haven't actually committed yet? You tell them exactly what happened. When you discovered the money, what you did to try to figure out where it came from, and that you were planning to report it. We're planning to report it? Sarah, I'm not sure I was. The admission hung between us like a confession. Sarah stared at me as if she was seeing me for the first time. What do you mean? I looked at that money and I thought about Emma's medical bills and the mortgage and the business failing, and I thought, what if I just kept it? What if no one ever came looking for it? David, I know it's wrong. I know it's theft. But for a few hours, I let myself imagine what it would be like not to worry about money anymore. Not to choose between Emma's medication and the electric bill. Not to watch you cry over medical bills while I felt powerless to help. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft. I understand the temptation, I really do. But keeping money that isn't yours isn't just theft. It's not who you are. It's not who we are. Are you sure about that? Because sitting here right now, knowing that money could solve every problem we have, I'm not sure who I am anymore. Before Sarah could respond, Emma appeared in the doorway again, this time in her pajamas. I can't sleep, she announced. My chest feels tight. Sarah immediately switched into mother mode, getting Emma's inhaler and sitting with her while she used it. I watched them together, my wife comforting our daughter, both of them depending on me to provide and protect, while I sat there torn between honesty and desperation. After Emma's breathing settled and Sarah had tucked her into bed, we returned to the kitchen to continue our conversation. "I've made up my mind," I said. "I'm going to tell Detective Martinez everything. About finding the money, about trying to trace it, about being tempted to keep it. And then I'm going to ask my bank to freeze the account and work with authorities to return the money to whoever it belongs to." Sarah nodded. "I think that's the right choice. The only choice, really. Even if it means losing the business, even if it means we can't afford Emma's medication." "David, we've survived difficult times before. We'll survive this too. But we won't survive you going to prison for theft." She was right, but the knowledge didn't make the decision any easier. I was choosing principle over pragmatism, honesty over financial security. It felt noble and terrifying at the same time. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling while Sarah slept fitfully beside me. Tomorrow morning, I would walk into a police station and voluntarily confess to being in possession of money that wasn't mine. I would watch any chance of saving my business evaporate. I would return home to face Emma's medical needs and our mounting debts with empty hands and clear conscience. At 3 a.m., I got up and checked my phone one last time. The money was still there, still waiting. In 6 hours, I would begin the process of giving it all away. I arrived at the county sheriff's office at 8:45 a.m., 15 minutes early and running on 2 hours of sleep. The building was a modern brick structure that looked more like a medical office than the imposing fortress I'd expected. Detective Martinez was a woman in her 40s with graying hair and kind eyes that probably made suspects feel comfortable while she extracted confessions. "Mr. Carver, thank you for coming in. Can I get you some coffee?" I accepted the coffee gratefully, hoping the caffeine would help me think clearly. "I understand you wanted to discuss a financial matter with me," I began, deciding to take control of the conversation. "Yes, we're investigating a wire transfer that may have been misdirected. I'm hoping you can help us understand what happened." "Detective, before you ask me any questions, I want to tell you something. 2 days ago, I discovered a large deposit in my bank account that I don't believe belongs to me. I've been trying to figure out where it came from and what I should do about it." Detective Martinez raised her eyebrows slightly. "What kind of deposit, Mr. Carver?" "A wire transfer for over $4 million. She set down her coffee cup and pulled out a notepad. "Tell me exactly what happened, starting from the beginning." I walked her through everything, finding the money, calling both banks, researching the source, and wrestling with the temptation to keep it. I was completely honest about my motivations and my delays in reporting it. "Mr. Carver," she said when I finished, "I appreciate your honesty. The transfer you're describing matches money that was reported missing by a client of First National Commercial Banking 3 days ago." My heart sank. So it was stolen money, or at least misappropriated funds. "What kind of client?" "A legitimate business that was making a payment to a vendor. The money was supposed to go to a company account for a large equipment purchase, but somehow ended up in your personal account instead." "How is that possible?" "We're still investigating, but it appears someone may have altered the routing information during the transfer process. Instead of going to the intended recipient, the money was diverted to your account." The implications hit me like a truck. Someone used my account to steal $4 million. That's what we're trying to determine. "Mr. Carver, have you had any contact with Mason Industrial Equipment Company?" "Never heard of them." "They're the company that was supposed to receive the payment. Have you had any recent business dealings with First National Commercial Banking, or anyone who might have access to your banking information?" I thought carefully. "No, our business banks with First Community Bank and has for years. I can't think of anyone who would have our account information except our bookkeeper and my business partner." Detective Martinez made notes. "We'll need to interview them as well, just to rule out any connection." "Mr. Carver, I have to ask, did you spend any of the money?" No, I was tempted, but no. Did you move it to other accounts or take any steps to hide it? No, I just left it there while I tried to figure out what to do. She nodded approvingly. That's going to work in your favor. The fact that you didn't spend or hide the money and that you're cooperating fully with our investigation suggests you weren't involved in the theft, so I'm not going to be charged with anything. I can't make that determination, but typically when someone is the unwilling recipient of stolen funds and cooperates with authorities, they're not prosecuted. The focus is on catching the people who committed the actual theft. Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by a new concern. Detective, if someone targeted my account specifically, does that mean my family could be in danger? We don't think you were specifically targeted. It's more likely that whoever did this chose your account randomly or because it was convenient for some reason we haven't discovered yet. But we'll be monitoring the situation. She handed me a card. Mr. Carver, we're going to need you to keep the money in your account for now while we trace the theft. Don't touch it, don't move it, and call me immediately if anyone contacts you about it. How long will the investigation take? Hard to say. These financial crimes can be complex, could be weeks, could be months. As I drove home, I felt a strange mixture of relief and disappointment. Relief that I wasn't going to prison, wasn't being charged with theft, wasn't going to lose my family. But disappointment that the money, which had never really been mine, was definitely going back to its rightful owner. I still had all the same problems I'd had 3 days ago. The failing business, the lawsuit, Emma's medical bills, the mortgage we couldn't afford. The brief fantasy of financial security was over. How did it go? I told her everything Detective Martinez had said, watching relief replace worry in her expression. So you're not in trouble? Probably not. The money was stolen from a legitimate business, and somehow my account got caught in the middle. That's so strange. Why would criminals use our account? The detective thinks it was probably random. Wrong place, wrong time. Sarah hugged me tightly. I'm so glad you decided to be honest with them. Me too. Though I have to admit, there's a part of me that wishes... I know, she said softly. I know. We spent the rest of the morning trying to return to normal life, but the elephant in the room, our ongoing financial crisis, wasn't going anywhere. Emma's medication still cost $400 a month. The Hendricks lawsuit was still proceeding. The business was still failing. Around noon, my phone rang. It was Mike. Dave, we need to talk. I just got off the phone with our lawyer about the Hendricks suit. And it's worse than we thought. Frank Hendricks is claiming the delays cost him not just rental fees for his buyers, but lost profits from another development project he couldn't start because his money was tied up in our job. Lost profits? Can he even claim that? Apparently he can. We're looking at potentially $500,000 in damages. The number was so absurd it almost didn't register. $500,000. For a construction project that had gone wrong due to circumstances mostly beyond our control. Mike, there's no way we can fight something like that. We don't have $500,000. We don't have $50,000. I know. Dave, I think we need to seriously consider bankruptcy. Chapter 7, liquidate everything and try to start over. Bankruptcy. The word Emma had heard at school, the reality we'd been avoiding for months. What would that mean, practically? We'd lose the business, obviously. Probably our houses, unless we can protect them somehow. All our business assets would be sold to pay creditors. What about the employees? They'd all lose their jobs immediately. I thought about Rodriguez, still recovering from his injury, about Linda, 2 years from retirement, about the younger guys with mortgages and car payments and kids. There's got to be another option. Dave, I've run every scenario I can think of. We're out of options. After Mike hung up, I sat in my car in my own driveway staring at my house. Sarah was inside, probably researching ways to cut our budget even further. Emma was at school, blissfully unaware that her world was about to change dramatically. I pulled out my phone and checked my bank balance one more time. $4,127,843.67. Enough money to solve every problem we had, sitting right there in my account, legally untouchable. For a moment, just a moment, I imagined what would happen if I transferred the money out before anyone could stop me, moved it to offshore accounts, disappeared with my family, started over somewhere else with new identities and unlimited resources. It was a fantasy, of course. I wasn't a criminal mastermind, and I couldn't uproot my family's entire life based on stolen money. But the fantasy was seductive in its simplicity. My phone rang again. This time, it was Sarah. David, I just got a call from Emma's school. She's in the nurse's office having trouble breathing. Can you meet me there? I drove to Emma's school with my heart racing, all thoughts of money and lawsuits temporarily forgotten. I found Sarah already there, sitting next to Emma on the nurse's cot while our daughter used her inhaler. What happened? I asked, kneeling down next to Emma. I couldn't breathe good during recess, Emma said between puffs of her inhaler. Mrs. Johnson said the air is bad today. The school nurse, a competent woman named Mrs. Patterson, explained that the air quality was particularly poor due to pollen and pollution, triggering asthma attacks in several students. Emma's response is more severe than most, she said. You might want to consider keeping her inside on days when the air quality index is high. But keeping Emma inside meant she couldn't participate in recess, PE, or outdoor activities. It meant treating her like an invalid instead of a normal 7-year-old. Dr. Martinez mentioned there are newer medications that might help, Sarah said carefully. Preventative treatments that could reduce the frequency and severity of her attacks. Mrs. Patterson nodded. Those newer treatments can be very effective. Some of my students have had excellent results. After Emma's breathing stabilized and we took her home, Sarah and I had another kitchen table conversation about money we didn't have for treatments we desperately needed. I called the insurance company again, Sarah said. They'll cover the generic version of the preventative medication, but doctor. Martinez says it's not as effective for Emma's specific type of asthma. How much is the name brand version? $600 a month, plus the $400 for the rescue inhaler. $1,000 a month for medications, more than our mortgage payment. There's got to be some kind of assistance program or charity or something. I've been researching all afternoon. There are some programs, but the waiting lists are months long, and most of them are for families below the poverty line. We made too much money to qualify for assistance, but not nearly enough to afford the medications our daughter needed. It was a cruel irony that seemed designed to punish the middle class. That evening after Emma was asleep, I found myself back on the porch with a glass of wine, staring at the stars and thinking about choices. In my pocket, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Meet me at Riverside Park tomorrow at 8 p.m. Come alone. Don't involve police. My blood turned to ice. Someone knew about the money. Someone wanted to meet. I showed the text to Sarah, whose face went pale as she read it. David, you have to call Detective Martinez right now. What if this is connected to whoever stole the money? What if calling the police puts Emma in danger? What if not calling the police puts all of us in danger? She was right, but fear has a way of clouding judgment. Whoever sent this text knew my phone number, knew about the money, and was willing to make contact. That suggested confidence, organization, and resources. I'm going to the meeting, I said. Absolutely not. Sarah, what if this person has answers? What if they can explain what happened and how to fix it? Or what if they want to kill you because you're a witness to their crime? We argued for another hour, but eventually I convinced Sarah that meeting this person in a public place with police backup I would arrange beforehand was our best chance of getting answers. The next day crawled by. I called Detective Martinez and explained about the text. She agreed to have plainclothes officers in the park, but warned me that the meeting could be dangerous. Mr. Carver, whoever stole that money is probably getting desperate. They expected it to disappear into an account they controlled, and instead it's sitting in your account while we investigate. That makes you a problem for them. So, what should I do? Honestly, I prefer you didn't go to this meeting at all. But if you're determined to do it, we'll have officers positioned around the park. Wear a wire and don't agree to anything. That evening, I drove to Riverside Park with a recording device taped to my chest and a sick feeling in my stomach. The park was mostly empty. A few joggers on the trail, some teenagers playing basketball, an old man walking his dog. I sat on the bench specified in the text and waited. At exactly 8 p.m., a woman approached. She was in her 30s, professionally dressed, with short blonde hair and nervous eyes. Mr. Carver? Yes. My name is Jennifer Walsh. I work for Mason Industrial Equipment Company, the company that was supposed to receive the money. What do you want? She sat down next to me, glancing around nervously. I need to explain what happened, and I need your help to fix it. I'm listening. The money in your account was supposed to come to us as payment for equipment we sold to a mining company. But someone intercepted the transfer and redirected it to your account. Who? I think it was someone inside our company, working with someone at the bank. They were planning to steal the money, but something went wrong, and it ended up with you, instead of in an account they controlled. Why are you telling me this instead of the police? Jennifer looked around again, then leaned closer. Because the person I think did this is my supervisor, and he has connections throughout the banking system. If he realizes I'm talking to authorities, I could be in danger. So what do you want me to do? Help me prove he did it. The money in your account is evidence, but if it gets returned to us through official channels, he'll find a way to make it disappear. I need you to help me document the trail before that happens. It sounded reasonable, but something felt wrong. Why would you trust me? You don't know me. Because you haven't spent the money. If you were part of the theft, you would have moved it immediately. The fact that it's still sitting in your account tells me you're not involved. I thought about Detective Martinez and the officers positioned around the park. I think you should talk to the police about this. I will, eventually. But I need to gather more evidence first, and I need your account information to trace exactly how the money was rerouted. Red flags went up in my mind. My account information? Just the routing and account numbers so I can show investigators the exact path the money took. I'm not giving you my banking information. Jennifer's demeanor shifted slightly, becoming more urgent. Mr. Carver, you don't understand. If my supervisor realizes the money is stuck in your account instead of where he intended, you could become a target. The only way to protect yourself is to help me prove what happened. Or I could just let the police handle it. The police won't understand the banking connections. They'll investigate for months while you're sitting on stolen money, making you look guilty. By the time they figure out what really happened, you could be facing charges yourself. She was trying to scare me into cooperating, which only made me more suspicious. I think this conversation is over, I said, starting to stand. Mr. Carver, wait. Jennifer grabbed my arm. There's something else. The money in your account isn't the only transfer that was misdirected. There have been others, and if you don't help me stop this, more innocent people are going to be put in your position. I looked at her carefully. How do I know you're really from Mason Industrial? She pulled out a business card and a company ID badge. They looked legitimate, but I'd learned enough about financial crimes to know that false credentials were easy to obtain. I'm going to have to think about this, I said. There's no time to think. Every day the money sits in your account makes you look more guilty. And every day gives my supervisor more time to cover his tracks. I walked away without giving her an answer. As I reached my car, I saw two men in plain clothes approaching the bench where Jennifer was still sitting. Detective Martinez had kept her word about backup. The next morning, Detective Martinez called with an update. "We arrested Jennifer Walsh last night on charges of fraud and identity theft," she said. "She wasn't from Mason Industrial Equipment Company. She was working with the people who stole the money, trying to convince you to give her access to your account so they could steal it a second time." "So she was lying about everything?" "Most of it. There probably is someone inside Mason Industrial involved in the theft. That part might have been true. But she wasn't trying to help you or stop the crime. She was trying to complete it." I felt a mixture of relief and fear. Relief that I hadn't fallen for her scheme, but fear that there were people willing to go to such elaborate lengths to get their hands on the money in my account. "Detective, how long before this is over? How long before the money goes back where it belongs and my family can move on with our lives?" I wish I could give you a timeline, Mr. Carver, but these cases can be complex. We're working with federal investigators now since the theft crossed state lines. It could be several more weeks. Several more weeks of having millions of dollars in my account while my business failed and my daughter struggled with medical bills we couldn't afford. The irony was almost unbearable. That afternoon, Mike called with the final blow. "Dave, I just got off the phone with our lawyer. The Hendricks suit isn't the only problem anymore. 3 other clients are now claiming we owe them damages for various project delays. Word is getting around that we're financially unstable, and everyone's trying to get paid before we go under." "How much are we talking about total?" "Including Hendricks? Almost $800,000 in claim damages." The number was so large it didn't seem real. "Mike, that's more money than our company has made in its entire existence." "I know. Dave, we have to file for bankruptcy. Today. If we wait any longer, we could be personally liable for debts the company can't pay. Bankruptcy, the end of 8 years of building a business, employing good people, serving our community, the end of financial independence and professional pride." "What about the Peterson project?" "We'll have to walk away from it. Once we file, we can't take on new obligations." I thought about Mrs. Peterson and her concerns about contractors who overpromised and underdelivered. We were about to become exactly what she was trying to avoid. "Give me until tomorrow morning," I said. "Let me see if there's any other option." "Dave, there is no other option unless you've got $800,000 hidden somewhere. We're done." Actually, I had 5 times that much sitting in my account, earning interest every day. Money that belonged to someone else. Money I couldn't touch. Money that mocked me with its proximity and impossibility. That evening, I sat Emma down for a conversation I'd been dreading. "Sweetheart, Daddy's business is having some problems and some things are going to change." Emma looked up from her coloring book with the serious expression she got when discussing grown-up topics. "Are we still going to live in our house?" "Yes, we'll still live here. But Daddy might have to get a different job, and we might have to be more careful about spending money for a while." "Does that mean I can't get my new medicine?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. "No, baby. You'll always get whatever medicine you need. Mommy and Daddy will make sure of that." But even as I made the promise, I wondered how I could keep it. Later that night, after Emma was asleep and Sarah was grading papers at the kitchen table, I found myself back in front of my computer, staring at my bank account balance. $4,127,843.67. What if I transferred just enough to save the business? $50,000 to settle the smaller lawsuits, maybe another $100,000 to negotiate with Hendricks. I could make it look like a legitimate business loan, pay it back over time once the company was stable again. But every scenario I imagined led to the same place: federal prison. Wire fraud, theft, conspiracy. Even if I intended to pay the money back, using stolen funds was a federal crime that could destroy not just my life, but my family's future. I closed the laptop and went to bed, but sleep didn't come. Instead, I lay awake thinking about sliding doors, the moments when life pivots based on a single decision. 3 days ago, I could have called the bank immediately, reported the error, and none of this would have happened. Now I was tangled in a federal investigation, facing bankruptcy, and struggling with temptations that challenged everything I thought I knew about myself. The next morning, I called Mike and told him to file the bankruptcy papers. By noon, our construction company officially ceased to exist. 8 years of work, dozens of successful projects, the livelihoods of 15 employees, all of it ended with a legal filing and a few signatures. Linda cried when we told the staff. Rodriguez, still recovering from his injury, asked quietly what would happen to his workers' compensation claim. The younger guys just looked stunned, as if they couldn't quite process that their jobs had disappeared overnight. "I'm sorry," I told them as we gathered in the conference room one last time. "I know this isn't what any of us wanted, but the legal and financial situation made it impossible to continue." "What about our last paychecks?" asked Tommy, one of our newest hires. "Those will be honored," Mike assured him, though privately I wondered where we'd find the money. After everyone left, Mike and I sat in the empty office, surrounded by the detritus of our failed business. 8 years, Mike said quietly. 8 good years, I replied. We did quality work, treated people fairly, built something we could be proud of. Fat lot of good that does us now. He was right, but I needed to believe that our effort and integrity mattered, even in failure. My phone buzzed with a text from Detective Martinez. "Can you come in tomorrow morning? We have some updates on your case." I showed the text to Mike, who raised his eyebrows. "Your case? Dave, what aren't you telling me?" I've been keeping the details of the money situation private, partly to protect Mike and partly out of embarrassment. But with the business gone and nothing left to lose, I told him everything. Mike listened in stunned silence as I explained about finding the money, the police investigation, the attempted scam by Jennifer Walsh, and the ongoing federal case. Jesus, Dave. $4 million. And you didn't tell me? What was I supposed to say? "Hey, Mike, I've got stolen money in my account, but I can't use it to save our business?" Yes. That's exactly what you should have said. Do you have any idea how this looks? The company fails while one of the partners is sitting on millions of dollars? I hadn't considered that angle, but Mike was right. To anyone looking at the situation from outside, it would appear that I had let our business fail while hoarding money that could have saved it. "Mike, it's not my money. I can't touch it without going to prison." I know that now. But other people don't. Our employees, our creditors, our clients, they're all going to hear about this eventually, and they're going to think you chose to let the company die rather than use your own resources to save it. The injustice of it made my head spin. I was being punished for doing the right thing, while the actual criminals remained at large. "There's nothing I can do about what people think," I said. "I made the only legal choice available to me." Legal, maybe, but not necessarily smart. Mike's words stung because they echoed my own doubts. Had I been too rigid in my thinking? Was there a way I could have used some of the money temporarily just to keep the business afloat while the investigation concluded? But even as I considered the possibility, I knew it was a dangerous path. There's no such thing as temporarily stealing money. Either the money was mine to use or it wasn't, and it wasn't. The next morning, I met with Detective Martinez and a federal agent named Thompson who had joined the investigation. "Mr. Carver," Agent Thompson began, "we've made significant progress in tracing the theft, and we have some good news for you." I could use some good news. We've arrested 3 people in connection with the scheme, including someone inside Mason Industrial Equipment Company and 2 accomplices at First National Commercial Banking. They were systematically stealing from large wire transfers by rerouting portions of the money to accounts they controlled. What does that mean for the money in my account? It will be returned to Mason Industrial within the next few days. But first, we need you to sign some paperwork acknowledging that you're voluntarily returning the funds and that you had no involvement in the theft. I signed the papers without hesitation, officially ending my brief relationship with $4 million. There's something else, Detective Martinez added. Because of your cooperation in this investigation, and because you never attempted to spend or hide the money, the district attorney has agreed not to pursue any charges against you. Relief washed over me. So, this is really over? As far as you're concerned, yes. You'll need to be available to testify if this goes to trial, but otherwise you can move on with your life. Move on with my life. The phrase sounded simple, but the reality was more complicated. My business was gone. My financial situation was worse than before, and I still had to find a way to support my family and pay for Emma's medical care. The drive home felt surreal. Just a week ago, I had been a business owner with problems, but also with hope. Now I was unemployed, facing bankruptcy, and starting over at 43 years old. Sarah was waiting in the kitchen when I arrived, her laptop open in front of her. How did it go? It's over. The money goes back tomorrow, and I'm not being charged with anything. She smiled with relief, then gestured to her computer. I've been looking at job listings. There are several construction companies in the area that might be hiring. The idea of working for someone else after 8 years of running my own business felt like failure, but failure was becoming a familiar companion. What about Emma's medication? I called Dr. Martinez. He's willing to work with us on a payment plan, and he thinks we can manage her symptoms with a combination of the generic preventative medication and some lifestyle changes. What kind of lifestyle changes? Keeping her indoors when air quality is poor, using air purifiers in the house, maybe moving her to a school with better HVAC systems. Each of these changes represented a compromise, a reduction in Emma's quality of life, because we couldn't afford better options. That evening, we had a family meeting to discuss our new reality. Daddy's going to get a new job, Sarah explained to Emma, and we're going to be more careful about spending money for a while. Does that mean we can't go to Disney World? Emma asked. We hadn't been planning to go to Disney World anyway, but the question highlighted how our financial constraints would affect every aspect of our lives. Maybe not this year, I said gently, but we'll still do fun things together. Free things like hiking and going to the park. Emma seemed satisfied with this answer, but I saw Sarah's face and knew she was thinking about all the other things we wouldn't be able to do. Summer camps, music lessons, birthday parties at fancy venues. After Emma went to bed, Sarah and I sat on our back porch again, wine replaced by coffee, because wine was now a luxury we couldn't afford. I keep thinking about the money, Sarah said quietly. Not because I want it, but because I can't stop calculating what it could have meant. Emma's medical bills for the next 20 years. College tuition, a secure retirement. I know, I think about it too. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had kept it? If you had found a way to use it without getting caught? The question hung between us like a confession. Every day, I admitted. But then I remembered that it wasn't mine, and keeping it would have made me a thief. Even if no one ever found out. Especially if no one ever found out. What kind of man would I be if I stole money and got away with it? What kind of father? What would I teach Emma about right and wrong? Sarah nodded slowly. I'm proud of you for giving it back, even though it hurts. Are you? Really? Even knowing what it's going to cost us? Especially knowing what it's going to cost us. Anyone can be honest when it's easy. Being honest when it's hard? That's character. The next morning, I checked my bank account one last time before the money was transferred back to its rightful owner. $4,127,843.67. For a brief moment, I imagined what I could accomplish with those resources. The business I could rebuild, the security I could provide for my family, the medical care Emma could receive. Then I closed the app and called the first construction company on Sarah's list. Henderson Construction, this is Bill. Hi, Bill, my name is David Carver. I'm looking for work as a project manager or general contractor. I have 8 years of experience running my own construction firm. What happened to your firm? The question I've been dreading. We had some clients default on payments and got caught up in litigation. We had to file for bankruptcy. There was a pause. That's tough. The industry's been hard on small contractors lately. Can you send me your resume? Over the next 3 days, I had similar conversations with 6 different companies. Most were polite, but non-committal. 2 expressed genuine interest, but both offered salaries significantly lower than what I've been making as a business owner. Meanwhile, the bills kept coming. Emma's medication, the mortgage, credit card minimums, utilities. Sarah picked up extra tutoring work, but it barely made a dent in our expenses. 2 weeks after the money was returned, I finally got a job offer from a mid-sized construction company 20 miles from home. The salary was $15,000 less than I'd hoped for, but it included health insurance and the possibility of overtime. I'll take it, I told the hiring manager without hesitation. Starting over as an employee after years of being a boss required a significant adjustment. I had to remember what it felt like to report to someone else, to follow company procedures instead of creating them, to implement other people's decisions instead of making my own. But there were advantages too. When the workday ended, I could come home and not worry about payroll, or insurance, or client complaints. Someone else handled the stress of running a business while I focused on doing good work. My new boss, Jim Henderson, was a fair man who recognized experience when he saw it. Within a month, he was giving me increasing responsibility and hinting at potential promotions. You know this business, he said one afternoon as we reviewed a project timeline. Most guys I hire need 2 years of training before they can manage a job this size. I appreciate the opportunity, I replied honestly. Dave, I've heard rumors about your old company. Something about financial irregularities? My stomach clenched. What kind of rumors? Nothing specific. Just that there might have been some questionable financial decisions at the end. I realized that Mike had been right. People were going to speculate about the connection between my company's failure and the money that had appeared in my account. Without knowing the full story, they would draw their own conclusions. Jim, I can tell you that every financial decision I made was legal and ethical. When the company failed, it was because of circumstances beyond my control, not because of any wrongdoing on my part. He studied my face for a moment. That's good enough for me. But Dave, in this industry, reputation is everything. You might want to be prepared to address these rumors directly if they become a problem. That evening, I told Sarah about the conversation. Maybe you should write a letter to the local business journal, she suggested, explain what really happened, set the record straight, and reveal that I was the unwilling recipient of stolen money. That would make everything worse. Or it might make people understand that you were a victim, not a perpetrator. I considered her suggestion, but ultimately decided that drawing attention to the situation would only fuel more speculation. Instead, I focused on proving myself through my work. I arrived early, stayed late when necessary, and delivered projects on time and under budget. Slowly, my reputation began to recover. 3 months after starting at Henderson Construction, Jim called me into his office. Dave, I'm promoting you to senior project manager. Comes with a $10,000 raise and a company truck. The promotion felt like vindication, proof that hard work and integrity still mattered. But even with the raise, we were still struggling financially. Emma's medical bills consumed a significant portion of our income, and the debt from our failed business continued to hang over us like a storm cloud. One evening, as I was helping Emma with her homework, she had another asthma attack. This one was more severe than usual, requiring 2 rescue inhalers and a trip to the emergency room. Her symptoms are getting worse, doctor. Martinez explained after examining Emma. The generic medication isn't providing adequate control. We really need to consider the name brand preventative treatment we discussed. How much will that cost? With your insurance, about $300 a month. But, Mr. Carver, the alternative could be more frequent emergency room visits, which are much more expensive in the long run. Sarah and I exchanged glances. We'd been avoiding the expensive medication because of the cost, but Dr. Martinez was right. Emergency room visits were even more expensive. We'll make it work, Sarah said firmly. On the drive home, Emma fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from her breathing difficulties. We can't keep doing this, Sarah said quietly. She's getting worse, and we're not providing her with the care she needs because we're worried about money. What choice do we have? I don't know. But watching our daughter struggle to breathe because we can't afford her medication is killing me. That night, after Emma was safely asleep with her breathing back to normal, I found myself thinking about the money again. $4 million that could have ensured Emma received the best possible medical care for the rest of her life. Money that was now back where it belonged, doing whatever good money does when it's in the right hands. I'd made the right choice. I knew that intellectually. But emotionally, watching my daughter struggle while knowing I could have prevented it felt like a special kind of torture. The next morning, I called Dr. Martinez's office and arranged to start Emma on the expensive medication. When the receptionist asked about payment, I told her we'd figure it out. We'll put together a payment plan, Sarah said when I told her what I'd done. Maybe I can pick up more tutoring clients. Or maybe I can find some weekend work. Jim mentioned that Henderson sometimes needs people for emergency repairs on Saturdays. We were already working more hours than we wanted to, already spending less time with Emma than she deserved, but we would find a way to forward her medication. That's what parents do. Over the following months, our situation gradually improved. Emma's new medication dramatically reduced her asthma symptoms, allowing her to participate fully in school activities and play with friends without constantly worrying about breathing difficulties. I continued to excel at Henderson Construction, earning additional raises and bonuses. Sarah's tutoring business grew as word spread about her effectiveness with struggling students. Slowly, painfully, we began to dig ourselves out of the financial hole that had defined our lives for so long. 1 year after the money disappeared from my account, Jim Henderson called me into his office with an unexpected proposition. Dave, I'm 68 years old and my son has decided he'd rather be a lawyer than a contractor. I'm looking for someone to eventually take over this business. The offer was so far beyond what I dared to hope that I couldn't immediately respond. I'm not talking about handing you the keys tomorrow, Jim continued, but over the next 5 years, I'd like to transition more responsibility to you, with the goal of selling you the company when I retire. Jim, I don't have the capital to buy a construction company. We'll work out the financing. I'm more interested in leaving the business in good hands than maximizing my profit. That evening, I shared the news with Sarah over dinner that, for the first time in years, we could afford without worrying about the grocery budget. Jim Henderson wants to sell you his company? Sarah's eyes were bright with excitement. Eventually. It would take years to arrange the financing and transition, but yes. David, this could be everything we've worked for. Your own business again, financial security, the chance to build something lasting. I nodded, but part of me was thinking about the path that had led us here. If I'd kept the stolen money, I never would have met Jim Henderson. I would have used those funds to rebuild my own company, probably successfully, but I never would have learned what I'd learned about resilience, about starting over, about finding opportunity in disaster. More importantly, I never would have had to face the fundamental question of who I was when everything was stripped away. Do you ever regret it? Sarah asked, as if reading my mind. Giving back the money? I thought about it seriously. No. I regret that we went through such a difficult time, and I regret that Emma had to struggle with her asthma while we figured out how to afford her medication. But I don't regret doing the right thing, even though keeping it might have been easier, especially because keeping it would have been easier. The easy choice isn't always the right choice. 2 years later, I officially became a partner in Henderson Construction with a clear path to full ownership within 3 years. Emma's asthma was well controlled. She was excelling in school, and Sarah had started her own tutoring center. We weren't wealthy, but we were secure. More importantly, we were proud of how we'd rebuilt our lives without compromising our values. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about that week when $4 million appeared in my bank account. I wonder what would have happened if I'd made different choices, if I'd found a way to keep the money without getting caught, if I prioritized financial security over ethical principles. But then I look at my family. Emma healthy and happy, Sarah fulfilled by work she loves, both of them proud of the man and father I've chosen to be. And I know I made the right decision. The money was never really mine. It was a test, a moment when I had to choose between the person I was and the person I could become. I chose to remain the person I already was, flaws and financial struggles included. And in the end, that choice led to a better life than stolen money ever could have provided. 6 months ago, Detective Martinez called to let me know that the 3 people involved in the theft had been sentenced to federal prison. The money I'd returned had been distributed back to Mason Industrial Equipment Company and several other victims of the scheme. Mr. Carver, she said, I want you to know that your cooperation was crucial to our investigation. If you had tried to keep that money, or if you hadn't been so forthcoming about your temptation to use it, we might never have caught the people responsible. I'm glad I could help. You should also know that your case has become something of a teaching example in our department. We deal with a lot of people who find themselves in possession of money that doesn't belong to them, and most of them try to keep it. Your decision to do the right thing, even when it costs you significantly, reminds us why we do this work. After she hung up, I realized that the story wasn't really about the money at all. It was about the moment when external circumstances reveal internal character, when crisis forces us to discover who we really are beneath all the roles and responsibilities and daily routines. For 1 week, I'd been tested in a way I never expected. The test wasn't whether I could figure out how to keep stolen money. That would have been a test of cleverness or criminal skill. The test was whether I could give up something that could solve all my problems because keeping it was wrong. I passed that test, but barely. The temptation was real, the rationalizations were seductive, and the consequences of doing the right thing were severe. There were moments when I came close to making a different choice, when desperation nearly overwhelmed principle. But in the end, I chose to be the kind of person I wanted my daughter to respect. The kind of husband Sarah deserved. The kind of man I could live with being. The bank accidentally sent me $4 million. And when I discovered it, I immediately started the process of giving it back. Not immediately in terms of time, but immediately in terms of intention. From the moment I realized the money wasn't mine, I knew I would have to return it, even if it took me a few days to accept that reality. That decision cost me a business, months of financial hardship, and opportunities I'll never get back. It also gave me something more valuable, the knowledge that when tested, I chose integrity over advantage. And that knowledge has been worth more than $4 million could ever be. And today, as I write this, Emma is a healthy 9-year-old who dreams of becoming a veterinarian. Sarah's tutoring center is thriving, and she's considering opening a second location. I own 40% of Henderson Construction with plans to buy Jim's remaining shares when he retires next year. We're not rich, but we're comfortable. More importantly, we're proud of the life we've built through honest work and principled decisions. Sometimes people ask me what I learned from the experience of finding $4 million in my bank account. The answer is simple. I learned that the most expensive thing you can buy is a clear conscience, and the most valuable thing you can own is the respect of the people who matter most to you. The bank accidentally sent me $4 million, and I immediately began the process of giving it back. It was the hardest and best decision I've ever made.